Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of the Greek Godcast. I am the Greek God, Tyler Jones, and with me is no one. That's right, I'm going solo today. I'm all alone. Yeah, so unfortunately, Dan and I were planning on starting the prequel trilogy of Star Wars, but he is unable to record this week. As we have told you guys many times, uh, he and I are both married and have kids, so when we make plans, life happens, and we just have to figure out. We're scheduling the podcast around our family life, so one comes first, and we figure out the other. So it feels like forever since we've recorded as well. I don't know. Let's see. We did the Samurai Cop review last week, but it seems like it's been forever. Or maybe I'm just getting old and time flies as you're older. Also, I was supposed to have one of my cousin on. We'll, we'll keep him nameless for now, just because I don't know if he wants to use some sort of uh, alter ego name. I don't know, but again, life happens. We all work actual jobs, so um, sometimes you just have to move on, and shit happens, and you got to keep on keeping on. Life's a garden, dig it. Before we get started, actually, to tell you what I'm gonna do, I finally got a chance to watch ESPN's documentary, The Last Dance. It's a 10-part series on the 98, 97, 98 Chicago Bulls, who had the greatest basketball player ever. I know there's a lot of people who want to chant for LeBron, LeBron, LeBron. Uh, no. It's LeBron is definitely top 5, but he's not going to top Jordan, okay? So, chill. But before we get into all that, I want to give a quick shout out to the podcast Cinematic Blind Spots. It's hosted by Adam and Josh. Their guys are awesome as hell. Go check their podcast out. They sort of do the same thing we do. They go through and review movies. They'll have guests on and do special lists of top 5 sequels that were better than the original, top 5 remakes that were better than the original, and then they will review just random movies. And I know a lot of times we make fun of stuff on movies on our show. They actually give movies a chance, whereas opposed to me, as you guys remember, after the third, uh, after the last movie of the original trilogy for Star Wars, I have absolutely zero interest in watching the rest. I'm only doing it because I told you guys I'm going to do it. So I'm going to. And honestly, I was going to do one on my own, but I want Dan here because he can throw in facts amongst my rambling. But Cinematic Blind Spots, hosted by Adam and Josh. It's a great show. Go check it out. I'll put their link in the description on Facebook. I'll put it on the comments. I'll also do a separate post on our Instagram page, at the Greek Godcast, where you can get the link to their show and go listen to it. You can find it on Spotify. I know you can find it on Spotify, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't really Castbox. You can find it on Castbox and Apple Podcasts. And I don't really remember. They have a page where they have all their links. I don't remember. I remember those 3, but I don't remember the rest of them. So, Cinematic Blind Spots on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Castbox. Like I said, I'll put the link in the description here on Anchor. I'll put their link on the comments that we put on Facebook, and I will make a separate post giving you the link on Instagram. So go check them out. It'll be worth the time, I promise. I wouldn't lie to you fellas. And ladies, sorry, I didn't forget about you. So, there you go. Um, also, after this, after this episode, I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant about something. And if you want to hear that rant, you got to go to patreon.com/the Greek Godcast and become a patron. It's going to be Patreon exclusive. It's going to be nowhere else. You'll get it on Patreon. That's it. That's it. Because the patroners, the Greek godsters, as I have started to call them, they need to hear something. Actually, you know what? They probably don't need to hear it, but I'm going to force them to hear it. So if you want to be a part of that and know what's going on, go to patreon.com/Greek Godcast, and it's $3 a month, folks. $3 a month gets you all the content. $9 a month. I edited the tiers today and I didn't remember. I got to start remembering to write this stuff down. $9 a month, you get to suggest a show once a month, a movie for us to watch to do a review on. So if you do the $3 a month, you get all the normal content. If you do $9 a month, you get all the stuff from the first tier, plus you get to pick one movie for us to review a month. And then if you do the $25 tier one, you get all the stuff from the previous two, and you get to pick a movie that you want to review and come on the show with us. And you get a free show shirt, which we have. Let's see, we got the original logo, we got the new logo, we got two of the original logo, we got the Greek God Dad Bod, and we got, that's not how any of this works. We got 5 different shirts, guys. 5. All you gotta do is go to patreon.com, pledge, help us out, have this become a somewhat legitimate program so we can quit our jobs, or at least, get some actual sound equipment. I'll settle for that. Anyways, for you Greek Godsters, the ones that are currently on Patreon, you're amazing. We love you. Thank you for supporting the show. Keep on supporting. And I've rambled on long enough for this intro. I realize that now, because I'm 8 minutes in and have accomplished nothing. This is much easier when Dan's here. So, again, let's take a pause. 1, 2, 3. All right. The Last Dance. I'm doing episodes 1 through 5. And I took a bunch of notes on the show. But as I started doing the notes, I realized there was nothing that really stuck out to me per se. I mean, we all know how great the 90s Bulls were. Growing up, being a kid of the 90s, all we ever heard about was Jordan, Bulls, Pippen, triangle offense, 72 and 10. I mean, the Bulls are one of the greatest dynasties in sports. So nothing really stuck out to me on court. We all know what we get when Jordan's on the floor. We all know what we get when Pippen's on the floor, when Rodman's on the floor, when Phil Jackson's the coach. There were 2 things that really stuck out to me. One, how horribly underpaid Scottie Pippen was. At the time, Pippen was arguably the second best player in the game, in the world, next to his teammate, Jordan. But as far as pay goes, he ranked 6th on the Bulls. 6th. There were 5 other players on the Bulls team that made more than Pippen. And he was ranked 122nd in the NBA. And again, the only player that was better than him, arguably, was Jordan. There was Jordan, and then there was, more than likely, for the most part, people would say Pippen. And 2, and the biggest thing that stuck out to me, was just how similar the 90s Bulls and the 90s Cowboys are. And maybe it's a little bit of a stretch, I don't know. But when I watched it, the first thing that just jumped out was how similar the 90s Bulls and 90s Cowboys are. And it just blew my mind. When I was watching it, I even paused it and started to think about this. So we'll get to that. It won't be too long. I'm going to try not to ramble on too long tonight. But we open up the series on episode 1. They're talking about the 97-98 Bulls. At this point, they had won 5 titles. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In 7 years. 5 titles, 7 years. Think about that. Now, if a player wins 3 titles over 20 years, he's considered a Hall of Famer. All of these guys had 5 titles in 7 years. Jordan had 5 in 7. And at this point, they're looking for their second three-peat. They won 3 straight titles. Jordan retires, goes to play baseball. He was gone for a year and a half, 18 months, they said, 18 months. He comes back, and then they win 3 more titles. And then the Bulls get cowboyed, as I'm starting to call it. Cowboyed. Because again, it absolutely blew my mind how similar the Bulls and the Cowboys were. They start off, they go through when Jordan was drafted. And after he was drafted by Chicago, in an interview, he said he wanted the Bulls to be as respected as the Lakers and the Celtics. Even, I don't want to say, a lot of kids don't know because this was before my time, but I've watched enough sports and, classic sports shows. In the 80s, the Lakers and Celtics were the thing. It was Magic versus Larry. Believe it or not, at one point in time, there was a white guy who was a top player in the NBA. That's the only hope we've had for a white guy. Let's be honest. Larry Bird was the last hope for white guys in the NBA. Now we're just defensive players and we shoot a spot up 3. That's all we can do. So unfair. So unfair. I'm trying to add, and maybe I'm talking too much, but it's weird sitting here talking about myself. I still haven't got the hang of it. But anyways, after they showed the clip of Jordan being interviewed after he was drafted, they jumped back to 98 and showed just how popular Jordan had become. And again, I was real young. I was like 8 years old in 90. I was 8 years old in 98, so I don't really remember a whole lot of it. I remember seeing him play, but I don't remember, all of the headlines and folklore and what have you about it. But Jordan was worldwide. That's the thing. A lot of athletes today, I know there are some that branch out, but a lot of the athletes today are just United States. Jordan was a star worldwide. He was a living legend wherever he went. Wherever he went, whether it was Los Angeles, Houston, Toronto, Japan, Paris, everyone wanted to see Jordan. Everyone wanted a picture of Jordan. Everyone wanted to touch Jordan. They thought Michael Jordan was this god on earth. And if they touch him, they will get some sort of magical powers. It kind of looks like, and this is going to be a weird analogy, but you know how you got those idiots that are in cults? Like, you talk about the Jim Jones idiots, don't drink the Kool-Aid mofos. And, the guys in Waco, we're not going to talk about how they died. That's up for another time. But these cults that believe their leader is a direct descendant from God, and he's as close to God on earth as we'll ever have, and he knows God's word because God talks to him. This is the way people looked at Michael. They thought, there's Jordan. He's from God. I've got to touch him. I've got to get an autograph. Just so maybe somehow his magic will come to me. That's how it seemed with these people. And I probably would have done the same thing. But I carry on. They then start to run down the 98 Bulls roster. Dennis Rodman. They showed Dennis Rodman. And a lot of people remember Rodman as the colored hair in WCW with Hulk Hogan and the Vegas party with Carmen Electra and all the earrings and dresses. The dude was a badass. He was in a league at a time where guys were badasses. He was the biggest badass. If Dennis Rodman was in the league today, LeBron James would be his bitch. Kevin Durant would be his bitch. James Harden would be his bitch. Because with as much as those guys whine and complain and as soft as they are, Dennis Rodman would destroy them. So, and I'm one of them people who would win? Jordan's record-setting Bulls or Steph Curry's record-setting Warriors? It wouldn't even be close. It wouldn't even be close. Now, you could get into the deeper argument, which I probably don't need to get into this right now. But you get in the deeper argument, it all depends on, well, if Jordan played in this era, or if the Warriors played in that era. Here's the thing. Jordan averaged 30 in an era where even Dennis Rodman himself said you could do anything. As long as you didn't throw punches, you were not getting called for a foul. Look at what happened when Jordan and them played the Pistons, the bad boy Pistons. They beat the hell out of him. Hip checking and damn near clotheslining him, and he averaged 30. In today's NBA, he could average an easy 65. There's no doubt about it. In today's NBA, prime Michael Jordan would average 65. You cannot argue it. Jordan averaged 30 a game in an era where you could clothesline someone. Jordan averaged 30 30 a game in an era where there were Hall of Famers everywhere. He would put up 70 easy in a game today. Meanwhile, you take a guy like Steph Curry, you put him in Jordan's era, and he'll last maybe 5 games. He cries a bunch when he misses a shot, talking about it's a foul, and then he's out. Kevin Durant, as soft as he is mentally, with always complaining about people who talk negatively about him, he would last 1 game before somebody got in his head and he'd lose his cool. LeBron James might have been able to survive because the dude is and don't get it twisted, folks. I'm not a LeBron hater. I'm not. I actually have a lot of respect for him. I think, in fact, I would say he's underrated. But I don't think he would be able to survive. Let me rephrase that. He could be able to survive in Jordan's era, but that is it. He could not take on Jordan. He could not take on Pippen. He could not take on Rodman. They would beat the hell out of him. And because I'm not a basketball expert, but when you watch an NBA game from today, and then you watch an NBA game from let's just say 94. It is a completely different animal. And the way the guys whine and cry and bitch and moan and complain and flop in today's game, they would never, they would never win in that time. Never. Again, there's a couple of guys who might be able to survive, but they wouldn't win. So, back to the Bulls roster. Then they bring up Scottie Pippen. Hashtag Arkansas. Everybody here loves Scottie because, you know, being from Arkansas, we don't have that many just superstars. We have local heroes. We have some guys who went to college and were great in college. But as far as pro level, we don't have many that were dominant. Darren McFadden, he had a couple of flashes in the pan in the league. Steve Atwater, Hall of Famer. Torrey Hunter, he had a decent career. Pippen, of course. I know I'm probably getting a few guys, but just guys from Arkansas that went to the pros and just dominated. There's not a lot of them. There's not a lot. So Scottie Pippen is kind of like one of our gods from Arkansas. Again, he's a guy that it's one of those things you'd know him because he was great and he played with Jordan. But you don't know how great he truly was because he played with Jordan. And the true test of how great Pippen was again, Jordan left for a year and a half, and Pippen he damn near took him to the promised land again. That goes to show you how good Pippen was, and two, it goes to show you how good Jordan was. Because here's a team that made the finals without him and couldn't do it. They couldn't get over the hump. But with him, they were untouchable. Untouchable. So, of course, then they run through the hiring of. They showed the hiring of Phil Jackson, the maestro. What can you say about Phil? He coached for 20 seasons. He's won 11 championships as a coach. He won 2 as a player back in the day. There's really nothing else you can say. He's the best NBA coach of all time. I know Red Auerbach, a lot of people will scream for him, which he deserves his respect. But he did it with one team, and there is something to be said about that. Did it with one team, one crop of players. And Phil won 6 titles managing Michael Jordan, who, while he is the greatest player in the world, is also a little bit of a egomaniacal ass. Let's just call it what it is. Scottie Pippen, who had moments of selfishness, and then he had Dennis Rodman, who, I don't really know what you can say about Rodman. Was a interesting character. And then he goes to the Lakers and has Shaq and Kobe to deal with, 2 of the biggest egomaniacs in American sports history. So, and then here's where I started having a problem. Okay? This is where I start to make the comparison of the 90s Bulls and the 90s Cowboys. Because both guys got jerried. Or I said both teams got jerried. What do I mean by jerried? Well, the Cowboys and the Bulls both were dominant. The Cowboys won 3 titles. Go back. They won 2 titles with a great head coach. The Bulls, at this point, had won 5. Then you got Jerry Jones and Jerry Krause. Jerry Krause is the general manager of the Bulls. While both guys deserve credit for building the teams, they also deserve all the blame for destroying the teams. Jerry Krause in '98 decided he wanted to rebuild the Chicago Bulls. Even though he still had Phil Jackson as the coach, even though he still had Michael Jordan, he still had Scottie Pippen, he still had Dennis Rodman, Steve Kerr, John Paxson. He said it was time to rebuild because the Bulls players, other than Michael, have reached their physical peak. So you can almost understand that. Be ahead of the curve, try to get guys out. But here's the thing. And according, Pippen was going to be a free agent. Jordan, well, before I go to Jordan, Phil Jackson had signed a 1-year contract. And Jerry Krause said, no matter what, this is your last season. Even if you go 82-0, you will not be back next year. And then you had Jordan saying he's never going to play for another coach other than Phil Jackson. If Phil Jackson's gone, I'm gone. So, you have the greatest player in the world who can still play, the greatest basketball player to ever live to this day, is saying all you have to do is re-sign Phil and I will come back. And Jerry Krause doesn't do it. And he gives his politically correct nonsense answers. But if you watch some of the things he says, and again, listening to some of what Jordan says and Pippen says and Phil Jackson says, yeah, you're only getting one side of the story because Krause is no longer alive to defend himself. Jerry Krause was tired. He wasn't tired of winning. He was tired of winning and other people getting the credit for it. He wanted to blow the team up because he thought, I drafted Jordan and Pippen, which you give him credit for that. He saw the talent. Well, technically he didn't draft Pippen. They wanted Pippen and they made a deal with the Sonics to basically, for Seattle, Seattle Supersonics. That was a team in Seattle that's now known as the Oklahoma City Thunder. Yeah, fascinating, right? But they made a deal with the Sonics to basically for Seattle to draft Pippen and basically hold on to him so no one else could get him for the Bulls to trade for him. So he deserves the credit. But when they started winning, and Phil Jackson was getting the credit, Jordan was getting the credit, Pippen was getting the credit, it seemed to irk Jerry Krause. Because these players he drafted and the coach he signed were getting the credit for the championships. And he wasn't. So he decided to blow the team up. And after '98, destroy it. And, I don't follow the NBA that closely, but the Bulls have won nothing since. So there you go. But this leads to a question. And again, I'm not going to roll through all my notes on every episode, or episodes 1 through 5, because I don't think we need to. We know about what Jordan did and what Rodman was, who Jordan was, who Phil Jackson was. But like I said, the 2 things that stuck out to me was Pippen and his salary, and we'll get to that because Jerry Krause is again a big part of that. And how the Cowboys and the Bulls are similar. Jerry Krause killed this team. He told Phil Jackson, the greatest NBA coach in history, I don't care if you go undefeated, this is your last year. To which made Jordan say he's not coming back. He was tired of everyone else getting the credit and not him. And you go to his interviews, he talks about how the roster is great, but the organization is the best. The front office, the front office, the front office. He took every chance he could to take the spotlight away from the roster. So how are they similar to the Bulls? Or the Cowboys? Jimmy Johnson came in to coach the Cowboys from the University of Miami. And he made trades to get Emmitt Smith and Dion and Irvin and Aikman and countless others. And they won 2 Super Bowls. Well, when they won the Super Bowls, Jimmy Johnson was getting the credit. Troy Aikman was getting the credit. Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, Dion. They were all getting the credit. More so Jimmy Johnson. So what does Jerry Jones do? He fires him. He fires him and then names himself general manager. And hell, I'm surprised he didn't name himself head coach. But he was tired of not getting the credit for a Super Bowl win. And then he started to blow the team up. And a lot of the Cowboys from that era have said several times, if Jimmy Johnson would have stayed, we'd have won 5 or 6 titles. But Jerry Jones could not help himself. Jerry Jones, like Jerry Jones does, got in Jerry Jones's way. And still to this day, Jerry Jones gets in Jerry Jones's way. That's why I have said on this podcast, the Cowboys will not win again. And Jerry Jones is never going to retire. The Cowboys will not win again until Jerry Jones dies. They might have some good season and win some division titles, but they will never win a Super Bowl until Jerry Jones is done. And I will argue with anyone on that. Why do you think he kept Romo around so long? Don't give me crap about how Romo was great. No. Romo stuck around and Jason Garrett stuck around because those were the yes men that Jerry appointed. And he knew if they won, he would get the credit for it. Well, Jerry stuck with them. But here's the thing. They were not good enough to win. And look at the coaches who have come in that were not yes men. Jimmy Johnson and Bill Parcells. Jimmy Johnson had the most success. Bill Parcells was having pretty good success, and then he was canned. Because no one is going to get the credit other than Jerry Jones. Sorry. So then we go back to the Bulls. Jerry Krause is Jerry Jones in NBA form. He could not stand not getting the credit. So it just sort of, that's what caught my eye the most. With how there was this dynasty. A team of untouchables. Guys who were completely dominant. A team that had won 5 titles in 7 years. Going for their 6th, their second three-peat. And if Jordan hadn't left, they probably would have won 6 straight. That's how dominant he was. That's how great he was. But because Jerry Krause was not getting the credit, he wanted to blow it up. Front office people, if you're by chance get a hold of this, let me let you in on something, okay? You play a part in a team being successful. Whether you're NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, soccer, whatever. You do play a part in a team's success. If you think a front office is not important, look at how mismanaged the Cleveland Browns front office is. Look how mismanaged the Cincinnati Bengals front office is. Look how mismanaged the New York Knicks are. What are those? Excuse me. What do those three teams have in common? None of them have won a title in 20 plus years. Look at the Detroit Lions and how mismanaged they are. They've never won a title. Never. So, look at the San Diego Chargers, or Los Angeles Chargers, whatever the hell you want to call them. Look how mismanaged they are. What do they have in common with the other teams? They've never won a title. Now, that's not saying every franchise that doesn't have a title or hasn't won in, X amount of years is mismanaged. But it has a lot to do with it. But front office people, you do not win the games. The players do. You do not win titles. The players do. And everyone in professional sports has an ego, but these front office guys that win championships and then get mad because they're not getting the credit. What the hell is the matter with you? Jerry Krause could have gone down as the greatest general manager in NBA history. But what is he known for? Breaking up the Bulls. Jerry Jones could have been the most successful owner in the history of the league. But what is he known for? A multi-billion-dollar stadium and the guy that fired Jimmy Johnson. That's what he's known for. Let's not, Cowboy fans, I don't want to hear your tears and you crying and complaining, but it's America's team. No, if it wasn't for Dak asking for an absurd amount of money, you would be completely irrelevant right now. Completely irrelevant. If it wasn't for Dak Prescott asking for a huge contract, you would be irrelevant. You are more irrelevant than the Dolphins right now. So I don't want to hear this crap about America's team because you're not. Get over it. But go back to the Chicago Bulls. You have two of the greatest players in NBA history, in Jordan and Pippen. Well, three really, with Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman, he wasn't a scorer, but he could shut down anyone. He would shut down LeBron James, and I will argue with anyone on that. But you have these guys, these front office guys, that just cannot stand it when their team wins and they don't get the credit for it. Jerry Krause, and I know you passed away. I know he passed away. And God rest his soul. I don't wish death on anyone. But man, just how much of a screw up it was, all because his ego could not get out of the way. He could not stand the fact that other people were getting the credit for the titles and he was not. So another thing that stuck out to me, and we're going to try and wrap this up, and I'll end it with a question. But how Scottie Pippen and his contract, and how I see both sides of it, and how I ended up having a big issue with Michael Jordan from it. I have issues all around with it. I have issues with Pippen, I have issues with the front office, and I have issues with Jordan. Again, with Pippen's contract, I see both sides. Scottie Pippen is one of the greatest players in NBA history. And for whatever reason, well, not for whatever reason, I know why, because he wasn't getting paid. He and Jerry Krause did not get along. No, and one of the things that you take from this show is no one on that team seemed to respect Jerry Krause. You can chalk it up to joking and just ribbing a guy, but Jordan would always call him short and fat, and how he stopped growing at like 12 and this and that. And Jerry would laugh it off, but you could kind of see he was laughing, but it was kind of like, yeah, that's kind of messed up for you to say. And it was. I mean, look, I'm a fat guy, but I make fun of myself because, I mean, I'm an easy target. So if I say, hey, I'm short and fat, go ahead and throw your jabs at me because you're not going to bother me. Okay? But Jerry Krause didn't seem to have that personality. He laughed it off, but it was kind of like, I would fire you or fine you, but you're Michael Jordan and people would kill me. That's kind of the way it seemed to me. But, alright, so full disclosure, I paused it real quick because I had to take care of something, and I forgot what I was saying. So it's going to cut randomly, and that's why. So don't judge me, okay? I'm getting old. But I do know I was talking about Scottie Pippen and his relationship with Jerry Krause. He was uncomfortable with the quote-unquote jokes that Jordan and Pippen and the rest of the guys would throw out to him. That's where we were. That's where we were. I'm getting old, folks. I'm getting old. So, at the start of the 98 season, Pippen was unhappy about his contract. Again, he was ranked 6th on the Bulls as far as money and 122nd in the league. There were not 121 other players that were better than him. There was one, arguably two at the time. Maybe. And that type of thing would not happen in the league today. Would not. You got guys that are 7th on the roster that are making like $15 million a year. Guys who get on the floor for 10, 15 minutes a game, throw up a couple of shots, cry when they miss because they were fouled, and flop and shoot a couple free throws and play some nonsense defense. They make $15 million a year. Meanwhile, Scottie Pippen, who's one of the best all-around players in the history of the game, signed a 7-year, $18 million contract. 7 for 18. Think about the way the contracts are now and how much of a discount the Bulls got with him. And the reason Pippen signed the contract, he said he signed the contract in so it was 98, his contract was up, so it would have been 92 when he signed the contract. He signed it saying if he had gotten injured or gotten hurt, he would still be able to support his family. And the owner of the Bulls, Jerry Reinsdorf, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. It was Jerry Reinsdorf, said once he signs a contract, don't bring it up about a renegotiation until your contract is up, because he will not listen. This is where I see both sides of it. Pippen wants more money because after he signed the contract, he became one of the greatest players ever. He developed into a great player. Then on the other hand, I see ownership's side of it. This is the contract you asked for. This is the contract we gave you. You signed it. Don't complain about it. And that's something that I hate in sports today. And it's across all leagues. MLB, NFL, NBA. You have a guy that'll sign a 6-year contract but wants to renegotiate after year 2 and holds out and holds the team hostage, basically. I'm one of them people, while I would side more with players on most things, the players have way too much power. Especially in the NBA. especially in the NBA. You signed a contract. It's the contract you asked for. You signed it. Be a man and stand up to it. And if you think you're going to get better or you want something, don't sign a 6-year contract. Sign a 2-year contract. That way, after year 2, you can renegotiate for more money or you can go wherever you want. But don't be a prick and sign a 6-year deal, and then after year 2, after your average goes up 2 points a game, ask for more money. I see both sides of the argument. The Bull, and honestly, in this predicament, I sided with Pippen. Yeah, he signed the contract, but he was also the second best player in the NBA. You should have paid him more. Renegotiate. Instead of give him an extra $3 or $4 million a year. Maybe that would have smoothed things over. But because let's see, that's a little over $2.5 million a year. Maybe pay him, give him a 2-year extension for I don't know, 18 million. Give him a 3-year extension for 20 million. You've because in the end, it's strange because in the end it didn't really cost them per se, as far as winning a title, because they still won that year. But what did it cost them? It cost more distrust between players and front office. Which, in the end, is the reason this team blew up. Now, honestly, if I was Jordan, and maybe he tried, I don't know. Maybe he didn't want to get into the whole thing. But if I was Jordan and I'm the star of the basketball world, I'm going to the owner of the Bulls and saying, hey, no one on this team likes or respects Jerry Krause. The head coach does not like or respect Jerry Krause. Jerry goes or I go. Had they have, I think, and this again, hindsight and just, playing armchair quarterback, whatever you want to call it. If the owner of the Bulls would have let Krause go and let Phil Jackson run it, be a general manager, coach, that team would have stayed together and been really successful. Would they have won another title after 99? I don't know, because that's when the Kobe Bryant that's when Shaquille O'Neal went to the Lakers and Kobe Bryant started to become Kobe Bryant. And we all remember how dominant they were. And that's another good episode. The Lakers, the Kobe and Shaq Lakers, because like Dan Patrick has said, I remember the Lakers more for what they could have been other than what they did. But you had two alpha males. One claimed he's the reason they won. The other claimed he's the reason they won. So on and so forth. And the team broke up. But that's another one that I think they will be remembered for what they could have been as opposed to what they did. Because if they would have stuck together, we're maybe talking about the Lakers, that era of Lakers, winning more titles than the Bulls did. And it's not that crazy of a thought. Because they won 3 together. 3. And after Shaq left, he still had 4 more dominant years where he made the playoffs and even won a title. And Kobe was a freak of nature. If they could have found a way to coexist and they had the pieces in place with Derek Fisher and Rick Fox and Robert Horry, and they maybe could have won 6 or 7. So we go back to Scottie Pippen. And where the big thing started and where I ended up having a huge problem with Michael Jordan. Since Scotty was so frustrated with his contract, he opted to have a late surgery for an injury and caused him to miss the first 2 months of the season. And I know I'm bouncing around a little bit, but this show, if you watch this show, it kind of bounces around, and I'm completely neglecting my notes, which maybe is not a good thing. But anyways, so Pippen decides since he's not getting a new contract, he took a option to have a late surgery, causing him to miss the first 2 months. And Jordan called him selfish. This is where I have a problem with his airness. Calling Scottie Pippen selfish. Jordan, you left. You left and went to play baseball. You left and went to venture off on your other dream and your dad's dream. And God bless you. That's your prerogative. But when you left, Scotty stayed. Pippen stayed. And not only did he stay, he was successful. Not only did he stay and was successful, before that, you even admitted yourself, without Scotty, there's no titles. And he was the 6th highest paid guy on the team. And he didn't say nothing until this time. He didn't say nothing until the last year of his contract. And you're calling him selfish? After you left. After you retired to go play baseball, he stayed. He still played. And you call him selfish? It's horseshit. And I think deep down in your mind, although you would never admit it, you know it's horseshit too. So that's the one big problem I had with Jordan in this episode, in this series. He called Pippen selfish. Pippen was the most unselfish player in the league. He could have easily went somewhere else and made, I don't know how much, but he could have been the highest paid guy on the team and maybe one of the highest paid guys in the league. But he stayed to win titles. And he didn't say anything. He didn't say anything about his contract until the last year. But after you left to do your thing, he stayed and still won games and got close to winning a title. He's the selfish one because he wants his contract renegotiated. Really? If you were such a team player, why didn't you take a pay cut and give it to Scotty? You were making plenty off your shoe deal. Just saying. This is just my opinion, looking at it, in my own little pea-sized brain. As I'm about to wrap up here, because I've been rambling on for too long, and I hope this episode is worth listening to. I don't know. But again, I took a whole bunch of notes, and it was kind of a waste of time, really, because we all know what the Bulls were on the court. We all know what Jordan was on the court. Maybe the only thing that stuck out as far as Jordan went was just how much he expected perfection. Just how much he expected you to be great every game. And make no mistake about it, folks. Jordan wasn't perfect every game. That's one thing this show does. They kind of skip over the bad games. And every player has them. Every player. So, you know, don't think Jordan was just dropping 38 and 8 every game. But, you know, it's really hard to say anything about Michael that we don't already know. We know he's the greatest player of all time. He is the GOAT for a reason. But the two things that stuck out to me through the first 5 episodes, and I'm gonna try to do the second 5 this week, was the, let's call it what it is, disrespect that the team showed Scottie Pippen, and how similar the Bulls and the Cowboys were. Because they had two general managers, in the Cowboys situation, an owner, who just could not stand the fact that someone else was getting credit for the wins. Their ego would not get out of the way. They wanted to be the guy. They wanted to be the guy on the cover of Sports Illustrated. They didn't want Jordan on the cover. They didn't want Phil Jackson. They didn't want Jimmy Johnson. They wanted to be on there. They wanted the credit. They wanted the people to say, hey, the Bulls, oh, well, I don't think of Michael Jordan. I think of Jerry Krause. The Cowboys, well, I don't think of Troy Aikman or Jimmy Johnson. I think of Jerry Jones. That's what stuck out to me the most. And it's something I've never thought about personally until I watched this show. And maybe it's been on something else. I don't, if it has, please send me the link. And if you think the same thing or have different thoughts, please, for the love of God, message, or on Anchor, you can send a voicemail, send a Facebook message to the page on Facebook, whatever. But, and then because then it leads you to think, what could have happened? What could have happened if if Jordan and the rest of the team said, you know what, if Krause stays, we walk? What would have happened if Jordan or Phil Jackson took over as general manager and he was manager coach? Jordan would have stuck around. Pippen probably would have got his raise. Rodman would have been re-signed. That core group of guys would have stayed together. Maybe they could have won 2, maybe 3 more titles. What would have happened if Jerry Krause just got out of the way? If he just would have stopped being such a egomaniacal glory hog, and he just drafted and traded, done what he was supposed to do, and shut up, what would have happened? Could the Bulls have won 2, 3, 4 more titles? Maybe. We'll never know. But now I told you I was going to ask you guys a question, and as I'm going to wrap up, this is the question I'm going to ask. And again, you can send a voicemail on Anchor. You can comment on the post. I want to hear your opinion. If you're the general manager or owner of a professional sports team, and I'm using this because Jerry Krause said the Bulls players, other than Michael, are starting to get past their athletic peak. So we want to rebuild. And I know it probably differs on sport because, basketball, you got 5 guys on the court at a time. Football, you got 11 on the field at a time. Baseball, 9. But let's say you have a team, and we won't even say 5 titles in 7. Let's say you've won 3 titles in 5 years. 3 and 5. Do you start looking towards the future? Or do you keep the guys on your team that have won and pound it out until they have nothing left. You run their gas tanks empty and get maybe one, maybe two more titles out of it. After 3 and 5, do you start looking to rebuild? Or do you hammer it for all it's worth and keep the guys around? Personally, I've thought about it. I'm keeping the guys, and I'm going to hammer them till I can't hammer them no more. Jordan, you've won 6 titles. Well, I'm going to pay you an extra X amount. Let's go for 7. Pippen, I'm going to pay you X. Let's go for 7. Because at the end of the day, if you rebuild and then you have no playoff appearances in 5 years, you're going to get fired. But let's say you take those guys and you hammer them out for 5 more years and you get 1, maybe 2 more titles. You still got some life. You still got some life. What do you think? Look for the future? Trade out and rebuild early? Or do you keep your foot on the gas and hope you can make the right picks and trades later? Do you go for the wins and the possible titles now? Or do you go for a couple of down years and hope the guys you draft pan out 5-6 years from now? Which one do you do? Because if you rebuild now and you draft a guy, chances are you're not going to be around in 6 years when they hit their peak. So what do you do? Anyways, guys, again, I hope this was worth listening. It's real weird doing this by myself. I'm used to having Dan here to play off of. Maybe this week I can talk one of my buddies to come on, and I can at least have someone here to talk to. Because this is really weird. And I feel like I ramble on a lot by myself because I'm trying to fill air, and hopefully there's no long points of silence. And I know it bounced around a lot. But again, I completely neglected my notes because after doing some thinking, like I said, we know what the Bulls were on the court. We know what Jordan was. We know what Pippen was. What Rodman was. We know all that. If you talk about that, you're just pretty much beating a dead horse. Again, I will do episodes 5 through 10 later this week sometime. I don't know when exactly, but I will let you guys know. I want to give a big shout out to a friend of mine here, Matthew Parker. He has hooked us up with the theme song. That's right. The Greek Godcast now has a theme song. We're almost legit. We're almost there. Almost. Just give us time. With experience of doing this and your help on Patreon, pledging just $3 a month, we can make this legit. But the theme song you've heard, hopefully on this episode, if I do it right, again, as y'all know, I'm not really technologically savvy, so hopefully you hear it. Matthew Parker, big shout out. Thank you, man. The song is awesome. I hope you guys enjoy it. Again, go to patreon.com/GreekGodcast to pledge. I posted a blog on there today, which is Patreon exclusive. I've posted a few other that are Patreon exclusives. There's going to be more exclusive content on Patreon. So please, come to Patreon and join up and be a Greek Godster. That's what I'm starting to call you great people on Patreon. Greek Godsters. We might even get y'all some shirts made that says hashtag Greek Godster. So, thank you guys. Again, I'm going to do episode 5 through 10 of The Last Dance sometime this week. And it may be just a few couple things from the show. And then we'll have sort of an opinionated discussion about who is the best basketball player of all time. I've already told y'all my opinion. But I know there are a lot of people, especially since this show came out, a lot of people that are screaming LeBron James. And again, I'm not a LeBron hater. In fact, it bothers me when people hate on LeBron. If you don't like him because, he beat your team all the time or something, that's fine. That's fine. But to say he's overrated and blah, 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 he's overrated, I would argue he's slightly underrated. Now, should he even be in the same conversation as Michael Jordan? Maybe. As far as athleticism and being an all-around player goes, sure. But there's one thing. In the NBA, we classify titles, which makes you great. Titles. There was never a chance when Jordan played. Never a chance. Once Jordan hit his prime, no one had a chance. LeBron is chasing other teams right now. LeBron chases other people. So, that's another conversation for later. Again, Matthew Parker, thank you for the theme song. It's awesome. We love it. Cinematic Blind Spots. Go check their podcast out. Again, you can get it on Spotify, Castbox, Apple Podcasts. I'll post their link in the description and on the comments on Facebook. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, it's weird doing this by myself, but I'll learn. Go to patreon.com/GreekGodcast pledge to help us. You'll get exclusive stuff. We got a lot of skits and nonsense planned for you guys. So, thank you. Have a good night. And as always, if it's easy, it's sleazy. Good night.